Pranakasha livestream.
Hi folks, it's Matt from Pranakasha Productions, and today we are talking with Oliver Hollingdale, a hugely talented filmmaker from the UK who's really into Vikings and that kind of thing, Tolkien, and apparently Game of Thrones too. So what have you got cooking over there?
Oh, lots, lots of stuff. Yeah, just we're planning to make a fantasy epic, and it's our sort of first time diving into a feature film territory.
That's
So
exciting.
yeah, so yes, it is. It's exciting. It's daunting. There's no turning back. Too much groundwork has been laid to back out.
Wow. Well, I mean, I'm really looking forward to it already because I've already seen a couple of your short films that you sent me, and I already forgot the names of them, so maybe you have to
I
tell
know
me.
everyone always has problems remembering it. Again, it begins with a V. Yeah, but both of them begin with a V. So it's you've got Voluspa and Valravan, which are both sort of based on sort of like Nordic poetry. Yeah, so those were kind of a really great dive into sort of really creating a visual film language. I've been in sort of video production and filming over the years, but this is kind of the really first time where I've taken the skill set that I've acquired and the knowledge and everything, and just my crazy imagination and love for film over the years, and thought, wow, I'd love to really kind of stab at this, and did those two short films, and they did pretty well, and people liked it, and people enjoyed the kind of the visual look of it as well, because there's lots of material like that out there, and it's like, well, how do you try and find
Make
your own
yours
unique
different.
look? Yeah, and I feel that I found the kind of the look that I really, really enjoy, and it's the look that I've always wanted to see on sort of visual medium. So yeah, so then kind of going from that and then jumping into Gallimay, which is like a straight into the deep end.
Right.
We're just giving it a go and just kind of seeing see if we can make a good sort of deal of it. We're doing it in stages because again we don't want to kind of trip over ourselves. We're playing it carefully. We're building the groundwork, all the pre-production's done, costumes, all that stuff, and we're kind of doing a we've done two scripts. We've done like a feature script, and then we've gone, okay, this is our best case scenario, right? Let's condense it down and do like a short version of that. So we're kind of doing that first.
The short version.
Creating the short version first, and from there, then it allows us to kind of do the crowdfund, get a little bit of kind of see how much we can raise. It's kind of testing the water to see what we can pull off, because as well as we still live in a very weird world, and you just don't know what's going to happen 3, 4, 5 months down the line. So I just think from a point of view of if we jump straight in, something could happen. One of the actors might be off on another job. One might be ill. Something might happen. Another variant. You just don't know these days. So kind of like, okay, something could happen, and then we've only got half a complete piece, and we don't know when we might pick up filming again. And sometimes, again, it happens in Hollywood movies. There's so many production issues, so it's just trying to mitigate these kind of foresight. If something was to happen, okay, right, let's aim for the short film first, because if something happens, at least we've got that. And
right,
then
that's smart.
It's a complete piece, and people can watch it and view it, and then we go, right, guys, this is our idea. We want to take what we've done and now push it and break it apart and film new content to make it into a feature. It allows us to have feedback as well and see where it's going, what people like, don't like, and take it from there. And then we can build crowdfund number 2, phase part 2, and then kind of sort of build from that,
so
really. So yeah, so it's just it's just a lot of kind of building the groundwork, I think, as carefully as possible.
I don't know if you saw, I just published an interview with Luis Garcia, who's also a filmmaker, and I was talking to him about how it works, at least in the US. Typically what people do is kind of what you just described, is filmmakers will make a short that's like maybe 10 or 20 minutes long, and then they'll submit it to various festivals and see how it does. And then if it does well and they get interest and some investors and stuff, then they take that short film and potentially turn it into a feature-length film.
Yeah, absolutely. It feels like it almost acts as like almost like a small pilot. It gives them kind of like a condensed version of the story, and it's like with script writing, because I do script writing festivals and competitions, and they want like a synopsis condensed version in like a 4-page treatment, and then from that go, wow, we like this. Here's some money to develop it into
to go farther
feature
with
length.
it.
Yeah, so that's a kind of route that we're going, and I think it's
that's
it's
exciting.
A sensible one.
Well,
it is exciting.
I'd like to talk about your shorts, because I was really impressed by it. So besides just the look, right?
Yes.
Like it was all really expertly done, the camera work and everything, and but I was really fascinated with this genre of short films where you're able to tell a complete story with visuals and sound effects and no dialogue. I think that like fascinates me. I've never tried that myself, but like, and also the thing that I really interest me in both of those, because they were related, like they were, the second one was sort of a continuation, or
there is a loose connection. There is a loose connection. They can be seen as a continuation, but they also stand on their own. If people stumble upon it, they might see one or the other. It doesn't matter which way, but if they really wanted to, they can watch the first and second one, and it does connect, because one of the actors kind of translates from one to the other, and so there is a kind of a connection there for sure.
Well, I really liked the whole Viking spirituality thing that was in it. Like, for one thing, I didn't realize that. I mean, what it really struck me is that it seemed like the Viking spirituality and sort of druid-based religion was actually really similar to a lot of things. A lot of Native American religions and cultures that we have in the U.S. We have like Native American, spirit people and shamans and all this kind of stuff. And I didn't realize that there was such a deep, rich tradition like that in the Norse too. But it makes sense, right? Because there's so much. Like I'd like to hear like what inspired you to do that story, and like just everything about it was so mystical, right? There was like this obviously.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's kind of a way where we are in such. I mean, the genre at the moment everywhere is Vikings. There's even a new series of Vikings coming out. I think in a week's time on Netflix. So Vikings is as popular as it's ever been.
Okay.
But again, it's just they got the classic aggressive berserker, axes, blood and killing and everything, and that's visually good. But I think what interested me when I was watching kind of the early seasons of Vikings with Ragnar and all that kind of thing, they didn't have so much the budget at the time to do big scale battles, but what they did focus on was more on the mythological layers of it and the kind of the spirituality of it, which I thought was really nice. And and that's kind of what I really liked, and I felt was missing in the later half of the series when it kind of almost when it finished. So that's kind of what I really liked. And my family history is I've got Greek heritage. So again, the kind of mythology is like, Zeus and Hercules and all the, the kind of the Greek gods. And I found just they have very quite similarities with kind of the Norse gods of like Loki and Thor and Odin. And these kind of very, kind of extraordinary beings of power, but they were very flawed in their actions. They're not seen as these kind of perfect beings, and I really kind of liked that. And again, budget wise, we couldn't really explore that kind of huge grandiose type scenario, but what I could explore was kind of the more spirituality of things, and kind of more down to a human level, and kind of that kind of connection with earth, and when you die and everything, you kind of go to Valhalla and all these kind of things. And that's kind of what I thought, okay, I feel I can focus on that, conveying something through poetic music. And the music was important in it as well, because we have a very talented composer on board.
The music was great.
He's there's a guy called Jonathan up in the Netherlands. His kind of brand is called Gildir, which is like white deer, and he does lots of traditional Norse language and things like that, and that's kind of another voice that kind of working with him he breathed into the project. So on a subconscious level,
perfectly.
Exactly. On a subconscious level, we may not understand what he's saying, but it somehow resonates something inside you. And I think that's kind of the important thing. Subconsciously, wherever kind of backgrounds we come from in this world and stuff, there's something ancestral, and sometimes it speaks to us on a
deep level. That's the thing about that's the thing that was so great about your short films was all that there, because like you said, so you had a low budget, so a lot of it was alluded to but not explicitly shown, right?
Yes.
Kind of like, but the thing is, that's really powerful. Like for example, I really like radio shows for the same reason, where you're not given any visual, and it's all up to your imagination to imagine it. And so it's similar, like in a genre like this, where like what I like to say is like, it's kind of like in the old days, in the original Star Trek, they didn't have a huge budget, so instead of showing ships and all this stuff happening, a lot of times they just had Spock looking into his viewer, with some blue on his face, and he had to describe the whole thing because they didn't have the budget to show it, so he would describe it, right? The thing is that was really effective, because he's a great actor, and he could tell you everything, and you would imagine it, and it worked. You see
the expression on the face, you see that, and it allows you to kind of...
And it gave it meaning and relevance. And actually, to tell you the truth, in my ballpark, that is actually more effective than showing it sometimes. So same thing, like in your movie, like you're like alluding to it, and like the sound effects tells it, and you have a vague idea what's going on. So it's all up to the imagination. And in a lot of ways, that actually makes it more powerful than just flat out showing everybody exactly what they're supposed to be seeing, So there's a beauty to that. Yeah.
Oh, good. That's exactly, because in Hollywood at the moment, there's just a lot of reboots and sequels and things like that. And there's a lot of spoon feeding. It just there's none of that. It feels like they're kind of what's the kind of word, where it's almost like insulting our intelligence and audience a bit. It's like if we don't get it kind of sin straight away, we just they think, oh, they won't understand and everything. But again, it's just we like to have those moments where certain scenes breathe, whether it's with a character or has a look, or there's a bit of music, or there is something. I do miss that in movies and stuff, and especially, and I think with a lot of kind of fantasy genres over the years, since kind of Lord of the Rings is stratosphere, incredible trilogy, and I think a lot of fancies get knocked down because you've got such an incredible high standard to kind of be compared against.
Right.
And I think it's just a lot of fancy content of late, things like The Witcher and other kind of things, and Wheel of Time and things like that. I enjoy it, but it feels like it's missing something, and
Right.
it's missing those moments. It's missing those. It doesn't feel like it has like a spiritual soul. It just feels like they're kind of glossing over the mythology, and it feels very modern at times as well. And I think it doesn't work. And that's kind of one of the things of like looking at the, for example, Lord of the Rings, the TV show, Rings of Power, comes out later this year. It just, I'm going to see it. I can't wait to see it because I love everything Middle Earth. But at the same time, it feels modern in a way. I can't quite put a whereabouts, and I just miss that kind of older fantasy. And even going back to like Labyrinth and Legend by Ridley Scott and things, where they kind of really commit to that world and the rules of that world as well.
Yeah, I think what it is like, of course, who knows? Now with streaming, it seems like everything is shifting, and really the game is changing again. But it seems like when they whenever they have a big budget film that's tens of millions of dollars, it's like they always have to aim for the largest swath of audience that they can grab. So because of that, everything is mediocre because you're trying to hit everybody, right?
Yeah.
Instead of like if you're an independent filmmaker and you're doing it for the art and the love of it, you don't have to think like that. You know what I mean? It's not like you have to say, if I don't get $20 million out of this thing, I'm totally ruined, Yeah. It's more like, okay, I put in whatever. How much are you guys planning to raise for
this kind of phase one? Just a little over 5,500.
Okay, so that's really low budget.
It is very, very low budget. Yeah.
So you can see, I like to be in that kind of position. That's like my whole life strategy too, because like my day job is as an IT guy. So, and it's okay. I mean, but it pays the bills and it has a good health plan, right? So because of that, I have like some financial footing that I can now throw money into my YouTube channel, and I can do my music and whatever.
Yeah, of course.
I honestly, to tell you the truth, I actually lose money every month on my YouTube channel, So because I put more into promoting it than I get out of the monetary thing from YouTube. But it matters to me, like it's the thing I do. So
absolutely.
But that gives you the guts and the ability to say, you know what, I want to tell this story. I want to show this movie the way I want to do it. And if it only gets 20% of the audience, who cares? I mean, as long as I have some people that understand it. Sometimes it's even, I've gone to a point where like sometimes when I perform, I'll do concerts sometimes just in retirement homes. Yeah. And there might be 20 or 40 people in the audience. And half of them are checked out. But if like there's one or two people in the audience is all it takes. If I like notice one person who's really listening and really into my playing, that's enough. That one connection. And I feel that same way with this kind of independent stuff. It's like as long as like you're true to yourself and you're really happy with what you did, even if it goes over most people's heads.
Of course.
As long as some people get it, that's enough,
Absolutely. And I think with streaming, it does sort of drown it muddies the waters with content absorption. But at the same time, it can work to advantage as well because of kind of the algorithm. I know we kind of love to hate that damn thing. But at the same time, is that it can, over time, your content will slowly find its audience because there's people out there like us who love that sort of thing. They'll probably look for it and say, oh, what, has anyone done any kind of, fancy film or independent? Sometimes it comes across, and then sometimes word of mouth, it can, build it back up. And I just feel with, things like Netflix and Amazon Prime and all these streaming, I wish there was like a scheme which they can chuck some money to independent creators.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, what's throwing even 50,000 or 100,000 to someone and go, here you go, this for your project. I mean, for us, that's like getting millions, because
Right.
and just to have that opportunity, because it feels like Netflix
That's
are
a
kind of
great
just
idea, actually.
knocking down so many of our independent creators, and you got to kind of think, well, all these wonderful franchises stem from an original idea, like
Right.
Ghostbusters. That was an original idea. They busted their balls making that film. It, run into production problems and things like that along the way, and it didn't know if it was going to be a success. They believed in an idea, and boom, Ghostbusters, and look where it's come. And same,
Right.
George Lucas with Star Wars. What is this? Some space opera in space? What's happening here? And again, it
Yeah.
all comes, and Back to the Future, and all these kind of great classics have come from this core thought
Little
at some
spark.
point.
Well, even
And
like
yeah,
Napoleon Dynamite. Did you know that? You know that film?
yeah,
That
yeah,
was a huge
completely
hit, right?
mental.
And
Yeah, it just
that was
became one of
just
those cult classics in the
that
end.
was an indie film. I found out it was
Yeah,
just a short film, and they used the original actor too in the feature length film. And it was just like a
yeah,
weird, super low budget, wacky short film that took off. And it kind of hit the dream that all filmmakers want to hit with their short
yeah,
film. And yeah, well, the thing about your stuff is, I mean, what I get, and I can just tell by talking to you, there's a lot of intelligence behind it, right? So again, like, I mean, and because of that, there's, it's just like really good literature, really good music. Um, there's all these interconnections, and like there's this huge ecosystem underneath the surface that's supporting that thing.
yeah,
And a really good audience member or musician may be consciously aware of all the stuff that's going on that makes it good, right? But your
yes,
average listener won't really know what makes it good, but they do instinctively just sense that, wow, this is really good. I don't know why or how they did it, but somehow it's got like that magic, right?
yeah.
So like your stuff,
That's what we're trying to do. Yeah,
yeah, your stuff's got that as far. I mean, to tell you the truth, I've watched Game of Thrones, right? And I've watched the um Lord of the Rings movies and stuff, but I've never watched a single episode of Vikings. So I don't even know anything about that show except that I know that it's a show that's basically sort of a riding the wave of Game of Thrones, but
yeah.
taking it in a
It did
Vikings
start
direction.
off. It did start off on its own thing, as I kind of touched on a little bit earlier on when we were talking. It started off with its own thing, tapping into kind of the things we were talking about. But
Right.
when Game of Thrones really picked off, I believe Vikings was on the History Channel. I think Amazon stepped in and purchased, I think, the rights for it.
Right.
And halfway through, you see a massive shift, and it goes full gritty, full Game of Thrones mode, and
Okay.
lots of violence, and it just loses that soul essence, that what people loved about it originally,
Yeah,
because it
that's
was on the
sad.
History Channel. It was on the History Channel, so there was an element of trying to look at kind of historical moments and tapping into kind of the spiritualism or the Vikings and their beliefs, and that kind of just got squashed, and it just hit the kind of the generic bare bones of what people know about Vikings, and
Yeah,
it's
too bad.
really sad. It's really
Yeah,
sad.
that's too
So yeah.
bad. I mean, like, did some of the producers and things leave the show and stuff like that when it got bought, or
Oh,
any of the
I think there
backstory?
was a massive handover. I think the creator of the show stayed on, and he kind of penned the kind of the it was the showrunner and the kind of the script writer and the story behind it and everything. But I guess I think once crazy amount of money is involved and all these kind of executive shoots step in, I guess it's very hard
Right.
to. I guess you can only do so much before,
Well,
because you could write it, you could write these beautiful scenes in, but they're going to get scrapped from the editing cutting room. They're just going to go, well, that's too slow, that's too
yeah.
character
See,
moment,
that's the
we don't
thing.
want that. We
That's what I'm
want
kind of afraid of too, is like, there's this dream, like you get to pick up a really well-funded movie, right? And you suddenly have a multi-million dollar budget, and that's like your dream. But it's kind of scary because then it's a completely different game you're playing then.
yeah,
Because now
it
if you got
becomes
people that are funding you, right? Well, guess what? Now you have to answer to them, and they're like, "Well, we're not too happy with that scene. Can you just change it a little bit?" And suddenly now you lost a lot of your artistic autonomy,
Yeah.
right? So that's the scary part.
Yeah,
Where like
absolutely,
sometimes I
absolutely. And
really
this,
feel like I almost like just want to stay indie my whole life because it's not about making money, at least for me. It's just about doing creative stuff,
what
you
I
know?
think a lot of, and I think there has been through kind of the cinema history over the years, there has been friction between the creatives and the producers. I mean, I think I saw an interview recently with Francis Ford Coppola. We're talking about Godfather. I mean, he says every day on that kind of making that film, I just felt like I was this close to getting fired, just because it was just battling that machine constantly. They
Right.
wanted to set like the film in the 70s, and he's like, no, we want to set it, years before. We want to set it when it was set. Oh, we can't. We want to have this act, and he's like, no, he wants to push for this, and it's just every day, just thought that I'm going to get fired, I'm going to get walked off set, and they're just going to
Right.
take it from me and restructure it. And look at it,
Because
and it's now the Godfather,
right. Well, again,
Look,
I mean, the guy obviously was passionate enough and courageous enough, and he'd figure out in his mind what he really cared about, and he was probably willing to walk away and just say, you know what, F you guys, I don't care.
I
I'll
think
go
he
back and
cleverly from the interview, when I think they touched a bit upon that kind of discussion, well, how do you deal with situations like that, and I think he kind of called a lot of the bluff on kind of giving that a good poker face, like, yeah, we'll do that, and then
uh-huh.
secretly go away and like, we'll go do this instead, and then and it
Yeah.
just kind of like indulge in the kind of egocentric mindset of the producers. We'll do, and then they just go ahead and kind of do it. And I think a lot of
And
filmmakers
then
do
he
that.
probably comes back and he does it his other way, and then he comes back and pitches it completely BSing him, saying, "See this? This is what I did, and I did exactly what you want. See that? Just can't you see that?
Yeah,
Can't you tell? Right there, right there. Don't you see it?" And it's all this Emperor's New Clothes thing. We just completely,
yeah.
just
And I
completely
think, yeah,
bullshit. I could see that.
and I think a lot of they do obviously like
Yeah.
screen, because they always test the film with an audience and they get a
Right.
score, and then sometimes if that's the cut that the producers that they're kind of voicing it, and then the audience are like, well, that's rubbish, that third act's rubbish, where's
Yeah. Then
this,
you got
it's
to
too
redo
short,
it.
and then
Yeah.
they kind of look at the filmmaker and go, we need to do something as soon as possible, and then they go, well, if you listen to us to begin with, it's
Yeah.
it is.
So, are you gonna do an audience survey for your thing?
I'd love to. I think, yeah, with the kind of the short, I'd love to kind of get a handful of people kind of thoughts, and the people especially sort of like donate, contribute to the cause and stuff like that of the fundraising. I'd love to kind of show them, yeah, a cut of it and see what they think, because I'd love to kind of get their thoughts. And plus,
Mhm.
it's an inclusive thing to have. It feels like they're part of that journey, and that's kind of what I love about filmmaking, is bringing people along for that kind of journey from the making, because I'm a big lover of behind the scenes. I love the making of and everything, and I want to have all that kind of documentating everything, that kind of
Cool.
all the process. Yeah, it's nice, and it's nice to look back on years down the line for people who are involved as well and go, oh yeah, I was in that project, and then they can go online and just see it all and kind of reminisce and enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that can be super fascinating just watching how stuff is done, you know.
Yeah, I just think a lot of movies these days do not have enough bonus material, and especially something like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, whether you love it or love to hate it or hate to love it.
Yeah.
I just think there's just so many missed opportunities for behind the scenes. They have like maybe a 25 vignette cut of making of, and I'm thinking so much technical abilities gone into these movies.
Right.
I want to see all that. I want to see how they've pulled certain things off. I want to see all the, and they just don't have any of that. And it just mind boggles me. And I just think, thank God I have the Lord of the Rings trilogy with all the behind the scenes, the appendices that have that, because that's like a film school knowledge
Right.
right there. And you can just sort of just sit there and just watch it and just mind expanded.
That's really so I wonder if like in your crowdfunding campaign are you going to show any behind the scenes stuff right off the bat
Well,
in
there
that?
is behind the scenes already. There's about, I think, about 8 or 9 production diaries already that people
Oh, cool.
can go to. It goes from location scouting to elven boot camp with our actress learning to fire a bow because she's never fired a bow before. There's first production meeting, costumes. There's even our first day. Yeah, all that kind of good stuff that I love to see. And again, it just highlights that journey for people who are maybe jumping in going, oh, what's Galloway about? And it's a nice kind of visual library for them to kind of see that we are passionate and we are putting a lot of effort into this, and to show that we're not just making something for the sake of it. It's something that we believe in. We believe in this story, and we believe in this world, this original story we're trying to create. And hopefully that translates on the film, and hopefully it comes across in our kind of conversations we have along the way.
I have a weird idea. So, any chance you're going to pull an Alfred Hitchcock thing and actually have you in the film somewhere?
Have me in the film?
Yeah, well, you know how Alfred Hitchcock would always have some scene where somehow he was in the film somehow. You know?
I mean, I've had like a little idea of maybe where I could be. I don't know yet. I have no idea. But yeah, it'd be good to kind of sneak in, even if it's like camouflage paint. I'm standing in the forest. See if you can spot me in the background.
Well,
one of those kind of blending.
You wouldn't even have to do that. I mean, like, you totally would come. I mean, everybody would believe you were a Viking just looking at you. You could just be like an extra. Or you could be like you could be the blacksmith, you know, that they come and talk to, and they're, hey, my sword,
forging something.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
I love a good death. I think I like to be sort of killed, whether it's arrow or sword. I just love all the blood and
the guy with the arrow in his eye. You might as well have it going right through your eye socket.
Yeah,
you know, go
or
for
like
it.
through the neck. That's quite a good one.
Then you can spit some blood.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the way to go. Go out heroic.
Oh boy! Wow. So I'm assuming now this movie is going to be a lot different style. In other words, there's actually going to be dialogue, right?
Yes, there is dialogue. There are people who actually speak in this. Sure, yes, but it's trying to, fight, especially when you're creating something which has a mythology, and it even goes into things like sci-fi as well. It's how can you convey information that doesn't feel just, oh, they're just an exposition body that's just spouting stuff. So again, I think, jumping back to things like Lord of the Rings, how they do exposition is just flawless. And when you look at it and how they've done it, I was thinking for a long time, how do they do it where other movies sort of failed? It feels clunky and everything. Again, they're treating it as a mythology, almost like a lost piece of history. It's almost like they unearthed something and they're telling like a story around a campfire, and you're listening to it, and it's and having that kind of intimate sort of dialogue, it pulls you in. It doesn't feel like exposition. It feels like you're being told something, like a story, a lost piece of information. And so that's kind of how with the certain dialogue scenes in Galloway that would kind of lays the kind of what's happening. We get a point halfway through the story where we find out, okay, this is the meat of the story now, but it's a lot of information to digest. But how do we convey the importance, the threats, and the kind of mythology of it as well? So it's taken quite a while there's always a little bit of rewrites happening, of course, because again, we're doing lots of script rehearsals with our actors, Zoom calls, and everyone, we're reading, doing sort of going through all the kind of dialogue and stuff, and just hearing it, and you think, that doesn't sound right. All right, I'm there with the script on the thing, and I'm just slightly readjusting it, and I just think that back and forth dialogue will eventually, when it comes to shooting, it should, because you want it to come across as organically as possible, like how you and me having a conversation right now. That's how sort of natural you want it to feel. You don't want it to feel very, tally ho, whoa, we must charge, because a lot of B-movie sci-fi and fantasy, they have that very, I call it the sort of cringe factor. It's just like, or they're very hammy acting, they're going very too Shakespearean with it, and it's like, how can we try and balance it?
I know about hammy acting. I don't know if you've watched any of my Star Trek stuff, but my character intentionally does that. But But yeah, so
With Star Trek, though, you
anyway,
can sort of get away with it. You can play
yeah,
into it, and it has like a nice charm to it, though.
yeah. Well, especially mine. Mine's based on the original series with Captain Kirk and Spock and Scotty and
Oh, nice.
Dr. McCoy. So it's got all those actors. Everything they did was way over the top. I mean,
Yeah,
then you just pretty soon you just get used to that style of acting. You know, like
yeah,
even like Bones, like every piece of thing he's done is always like, "Ugh, you know, Jim,
yeah,
we gotta do this now. You
yeah.
know,
No, it is great. It's so extra.
yeah. So, but I mean, okay, but um, so you wrote the script, right?
Yeah, me and my friend Craig, we conceptualized the ideas. Again, this is going back a year ago now, really. I
Okay.
think a year this month when we started coming up with the idea for it, because we were in lockdown after Christmas, January, February, dead months. No one's doing anything, and just having that conversation. Oh, wouldn't it be good to, do something fancy? Oh, it'd be so good. And it's just our love for that genre, and we just started come up with ideas. Or what about, if we did something like this, or a story of this, haven't seen this before. Oh, this would be cool. And it kind of just started building from that. We started building, creating maps of the world and some characters and
Hmm.
things, and it almost on a Dungeons and
I was
Dragons.
just gonna say,
And
like, you
yeah,
guys should play D&D and just like work it out in a game and then turn it into a movie, you know?
yeah, I've done Dungeons and Dragons before.
Okay.
Yeah, I did enjoy it. It can be. I think it helps being with the right people
Oh yeah,
because
totally. You got to have the imagination.
yeah, I wasn't with the sort of right people to do it,
Yeah,
and
you got
but
to have the
yeah,
right
I
dungeon
think
master.
yeah, you got to really have that kind of good imagination type thing and the
Mm.
love for that kind of um the kind of the mythology, and it's great. It is good. It's good. So yeah, it's that kind of mindset is creating that, and then from there it's like, oh, let's see if we can get to a
You
point,
can
and
do it.
now now it's to the point of like, no, backing out. We're too deep. So
Yeah,
it's like, right,
that's.
we've got to commit. Let's
So I have
do
a
this.
question. Like, do you have like, are you a big history buff, or do you have somebody in your crew that's sort of like your historical advisor or a mythology person that really knows it?
I mean, I think everyone has kind of little knowledges of everything, and again, with the fantasy is we, it is sort of like a sandbox. You can sort of, do what you want, but we do have with things like with the two Viking short films that I did, we did have sort of Viking reenactors be involved with that. So kind of some,
Oh, great.
even down to some discussion about costumes and things like
Right.
that, and the swords they had, and how would they fire, the stance of some formation. So yeah, we had some of that, and again, we're bringing because again with the fantasy, if you go to fantasy, it's then you've got
And
the
loses
Hobbit, where
substance.
you've got Legolas jumping over dwarfs' heads, and it's like down a barrel sequence, and it looks like a video game. It's just like, okay, right, how can you drop nice fantastical flavors in that makes you go, oh, that's cool, but keep it quite grounded. And again, with like
Real.
Lord of the Rings and stuff, they treated it as if it was like a lost piece of history and filmed as if it was, real. And we want to have that weight, want to have that ground, we want to feel that the environment they're doing and everything that they're doing feels real.
Right.
That's the kind of the approach that we're going.
Yeah. And yeah. I had something important to say, now I lost it.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Was it something about the history side of things?
Yeah, it was so like what I find again is if you go like for example, if you have a show where you're gonna have like a shaman, a spiritual person, it, it's a really good it's a really good idea, right? But you have to do it right. You got to have some real understanding behind it. Because if you just do sort of your pop culture version of what a shaman is,
Yeah.
it can really fall flat.
Yes,
Yeah.
there is. There's a lot of things through Hollywood iconography where it is that stereotypical certain things, whether it is a conveying of a certain belief or whatever. And yeah, we want to avoid that. So anything that's whether it's spiritual or a death or anything like that, we want to treat it and try and give those moments of whether it's kind of letting the music play or having. We really want to. Yeah, we really want to add substance to it rather than just be showy and flashy. We want to
Right.
have these kind of respectful moments where there is a connection to that, to the kind of moment for sure.
Okay. Okay, now I'm going to go back to the short film.
Okay.
I think it was the second one where I'm trying to remember what happens. So actually, it was kind of a death sequence, right? It was sort of like a ritual suicide type of thing.
Yes, that was a that Voluspa is that is a kind of series of poems, which deals with kind of oracles that kind of have vision, or seers have visions of the Ragnarok, which is the kind of the Norse apocalypse, the ending of the world and the sort of rebirth.
Oh, okay.
And we have taken some creative liberties, of course, infusing some other little moments through it.
So just tell me what was going on in that. So what was the purpose of that ritual?
Yes, so it is having the visions of the end of the world and the kind of the fall of man and the kind of the wiping out, and kind of from the ashes will raise the kind of a new, but a rebirth. And it's that kind of plead, because the kind of the seer has that connection with higher power, just that kind of pleading to the gods, to kind of please, don't let this happen.
Okay.
It's almost like trying to prevent it from happening. Look, I'm sacrificing my partner, my lover, who is my everything. I mean, it's that kind of thing where I'm giving everything to don't let this happen. Don't happen. There is good, and then it's kind of the inevitability that it is going to happen, because again, like kind of like reincarnation and stuff, and a lot of kind of mythology and religion stuff have that kind of things go in cycles. The beginning, middle, and end, and then it starts again, and that's the kind of the motif that's sort of running through it.
Okay, so of course in that short, it didn't explain the overall context from what I remember. You just had the personal. You just zoomed right into what was happening between these two people, but you didn't know that was why they were doing that. But
I think it requires a couple watches, because if you listen to what she's saying and the kind of the entity that she's communicating with, you do can sort of piece together, just like just she's pleading to the All-Father, pleading to Odin, please step in, intervene, help us, don't leave us. Because rather than kind of just going Odin, they address him as the All-Father. So I think if it was Odin, I think people might connect more and be like, okay, she's trying to communicate with Odin, but she calls him All-Father. So if you hear All-Father, she's pleading to him, please help us, please help,
Well, the great thing about it is, so even though I didn't know what was going on totally, right?
Yep.
Obviously, there's a lot that I missed in that viewing, but still, it was done so well that there was so much there that kept me in the scene and wanting to watch it, that kept me going. And I think that's the beauty of it too. So it was just so well done, because again, a lot of it I think is because there's so much thought behind it and meaning that just sort of bubbles up through the scene, because you guys know what you're doing and you have a real deep root into the mythology and stuff, and it all comes through. So that's what gives it that substance. So
absolutely good. And again, it's just like the music in it as well. It plays.
And the music,
Because again, if you look into the lyrics of the wording, that's a poetry in itself, and that adds another layer to it. Again, it allows people to enjoy it for what it is, kind of a visual, 10 minutes or whatever. But again, if people are interested in it, go, oh, what does that mean? What does that mean? There's information there that you can dig in and find those answers, which is quite nice. Again, it's not, again, it's allowing the audience to kind of discover things. Because again, those two short films might be the first introduction into that sort of Norse mythology, and be like, well, that was interesting. I'd like to know more about it. And then if they follow the breadcrumbs, it will lead them into these kind of answers, and then before they know it, they've broadened their horizon of the kind of mythology, and they start, and then they go, oh wow, yeah, this is cool.
I mean, like right now, Norse mythology is in pop culture because of Thor and all those movies, right? And
I think it can I think if someone was to type in, Thor or Loki or something like that, somewhere in that algorithm, my short films might pop up, and they might watch it and they go, "Well, this isn't really."
But yours is so
Thor,
much better. I mean,
Loki.
it's not like popcorn,
Well, that's the thing. I'm hoping that
comic
because
book
a lot
things.
of exactly that, a lot of kind of generations now, that's their first exposure to commercialized Norse. And I've read an article recently, Disney have been stepping into, and you can't call you this brand Loki or thing. And I'm like, who are they to kind of brand and copyright things
Something
of?
that's been around for centuries.
It's just ridiculous. So hopefully that people who are searching for, when they look at things like Thor and Odin, all this stuff, if they came across the two short films and they watch it, I hope it makes them go, oh, maybe I've the Loki and Thor and everything that I know isn't the truer representation. Now there's more to it. There's a better understanding of it, and then they can, if they're really interested, then they can use that and other short films that are out there, and through music and some wonderful artists out there like Vardruna Einar Selvik. He did a lot of the music for Vikings, and he does a lot of Icelandic vocals and old language through songs and old instruments.
Yeah, that's super cool.
That they had back in the day. And again, that's a whole nother medium that a lot of these people probably aren't aware about, and they're discovering them. And
it's funny. I mean, do you know that sci-fi show The Expanse?
The Expanse, yeah.
Their theme song is like somebody's, I think it's in Nordic or something. You can't even tell what she's saying, but it's really, again, it's right out of that genre. It's like straight from, Scandinavia and stuff. So even there, it's got that in it, even though it's a sci-fi show that has nothing to do with any of that kind of stuff.
I think with sci-fi and fantasy, I think there is a close relationship between each other, because again, it's just, you can translate it to the universe, and it's just that kind of, and again, when you come across other religions in sci-fi and languages and all this kind of stuff, again, it's like a lost voice. And again, it's just, and you can sort of blend it, and that's probably the mindset of these guys when they did the intro. They use that because it's almost like an alien language. You don't understand it, but but
you get all the feelings.
Something.
It's got this huge expansive feeling. There's tons of emotion to it. The person who sung it was a great singer. The music is beautiful, and so I mean, it works totally. Actually, I think the reason why they did it is because the reboot of Battlestar Galactica had a similar opening theme. If you listen to them side by side, you can see the genres are pretty close. So they might have got the idea from them.
Inspired.
But once again, I mean, so Battlestar Galactica, of course, it has this whole. Did you ever watch that show?
Yeah, not back in the day. Yeah, it was one of those things that was on television here in the UK, but I never watched sort of beginning to end. They used to play sort of random episodes.
Okay. Are you talking? Is that the original kind of corny one or the reboot?
I think it was this is. I didn't. To be honest, I didn't know if there was a reboot, but it must have been the original one. Surely, if this is going back to late '90s, early 2000s.
No, that might be the reboot.
Okay.
Well, let me ask you this: do you remember? Was Star Trek? I mean, not Star Trek. Starbuck. Was it played by a guy smoking a cigar, or was it a platinum blonde?
Do you know what?
Katie
I
Sackhoff.
can't remember. Katie Sackhoff then. Yeah.
Okay. Katie Sackhoff. Yeah, if it was Katie Sackhoff, then
that name. I remember. Yeah, it would have been that one then, because I remember as a kid going, "Oh, that's a cool name."
Yeah. Okay. Then you saw the reboot. The original Battlestar Galactica came out like in the 80s. And it was really,
it would have been the new one. I thought
it was trashy. I actually thought, even back then, I thought it was dumb. But there were a lot of people that liked it, even way back when. So, but the reboot actually was much darker, much more serious, and I thought actually was super successful. And
I remember enjoying it. And when there was, when The Last Jedi came out, and there's that scene where obviously the ships are sort of floating and they're trying to catch up. It reminds me of a much better executed version of that in Battlestar Galactica, where I think they're jumping to hyperspace and they're trying to get ahead, and they go boom, boom, and they're sort of kind of chasing her. But each time they do it, it does a lot of psychological, and then it does some crazy shit to their body, and it's just like, oh.
Yeah.
And I thought, my God, if they translated that into this, I think would have, cut the casino rubbish on the planet, and you could have had some really cool stuff. Yeah. So it's interesting how.
Yeah.
Well, of course. Ideas,
Luckily, as we know, The Mandalorian saved Star Wars as far as I'm concerned. So The Mandalorian is really good.
It goes back to, I haven't watched the Boba Fett, the Book of Boba Fett.
I haven't watched one.
That yet.
I've watched one episode of Boba Fett,
but I watched the Mandalorian, and I really did enjoy that. And it goes back to the roots of that kind of, sort of that Western in space.
Exactly.
Kind of
it went even farther than Star Wars. That you like. And it's mostly the music, in my opinion, is what. Well, I'm like, oh God, this is a spaghetti western.
It's like that kind of the good, the bad, the ugly. That kind of simple motif, but with a flute.
And the thing that kind of figure. The thing that made Mandalorian so good is like, it was so well done. Like all the effects are all super good, but it also had that tongue-in-cheek quality where you could tell they're just like telling. A lot of times they're being serious, but they're also sort of telling a joke at the same time. So there's like these gags that happen, but they're done well in a sophisticated way so that you're like, you know what, this is good. I can tell there's like a hidden message coming through in this episode. I can see them doing it, and it's good. Like the guys who are running the show are very intelligent, and it's not all spoon-fed too.
They're fans of it. They love the material, and I just think the prequel trilogy, I just think it just left everyone in such a downer.
Yeah.
It just left everyone so deflated, thinking, oh, I know.
And I think
really
it's the same
that's
thing.
That's how you left it. And then the Mandalorian was it was just a bit of a breath of fresh air. Just a bit of a good, there are some people out there who still understand what's going on.
Yeah, I think what happened with my take is what happened with the prequels is by that time Star Wars was so well established and George Lucas was so well established that like everybody was afraid to tell him when stuff that he did was shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he didn't really have the advisors anymore, and so sometimes he would
just full of yes men.
Yeah, pretty much. Because it became all about the money and the gigantic machine that they created around him. Because like you go back and I remember when I watched it, even like there were certain George Lucas isms in certain scenes where he'd like to just like totally overblow a scene where you look at it and there's like tons of things happening, in this frame, but like. Eventually you become overwhelmed. Like that's just too much of stuff is coming at me at once. I can't take it anymore. And you're like, can you just please give me a scene where things are slow and I can calm down?
More. Yeah, absolutely.
But unfortunately, when he tried to do scenes like that, the dialogue was so horrible.
Oh my God,
the poor actors had to somehow do something with it,
Yeah, I do not blame the actors at all. And I know everyone gave like Hayden Christensen like a lot of flack over the years. And I'm like, if you're standing on a green screen set and you've just got someone with a megaphone coming from the background and going, act sad, act upset. I mean, it's just like,
and you're like, I can't remember what was that one scene where he had the worst lines ever. He had to say something like, I really like waterfalls. Waterfalls just make me feel happy. I mean, that's not what he said, but that was basically all it was in the dialogue. And somehow he had to do something with it, and it completely fell flat. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is it is a shame. And again, just like how you had the original Star Wars, which are like, oh my God, amazing. And then the prequels, it just, for kind of, I guess, my generation growing up, sort of post the Star Wars kind of thing, for me, it was like Lord of the Rings was how a lot probably viewed the original Star Wars, and the prequels is how a lot of people, and how I view the Hobbit films, because the quality is just, it's just so much unnecessary CGI, too much producers going, right, we know 2 movies, want 3 movies. you just got to do it, and
You just got to
even,
milk it, get the maximum money out of it, get the most people to pay tickets.
and then
yeah, yeah,
and then, but again, it's just the audience go, well, look at Lord of the Rings. It's 20 years old, and it looks better than most movies these days, and it's even surpassed it aged better technically and visually than the Hobbit movies, which is just like newer technology. It's it's really strange, isn't it? Kind of.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, well, actually, one thing that perplexed me is in the first Star Wars prequel movie. Okay, now I can't remember what it was called. Darn it.
Oh, the Phantom Menace.
Phantom Menace. Okay, so they had Liam Neeson in it, right? A great actor.
Yep.
And then they killed him off. I'm like, what the hell? That was a bad idea.
They should have kept him.
They should have kept him. He was doing great.
At least they should have kept him in at least, or maybe die in the second one. I mean,
because they had a really good premise. So the premise of Obi-Wan Kenobi and his mentor, that relationship was a great idea, and they could have explored that so much farther. Because you had these two great actors, and they, there was a lot they could have kept going with that. But then they killed him. Then they killed him off.
Yeah, and it's such a shame they killed him off, and then they got rid of Darth Maul as well. Because I mean, that fight sequence at the end is still one of the best in the trilogy. Just so good, so energetic, and just so kinetic with the fighting. And it's just like, oh, he's dead. And it's like, what? At least keep him for the second one, and maybe have Qui-Gon die in the second one, and kind of, and then they've got Anakin in the trio with them together, and having that dynamic, and the handover, the death of Qui-Gon, and responsibility, and kind of, you could do some really great stuff, and it's just we're now.
That's too bad. I mean, there was a lot of great ideas.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a lot of things that, again, it boils down to the execution, right? They had some really good stuff that they could have really gone with, that they just basically just messed it up. It just didn't. It's in the details, that it didn't execute right, and so it just came off corny.
Oh yes. Oh yeah. But, but yeah, at least we got the Mandalorian.
Yeah, but the
nice
Mandalorian,
palate cleanser.
A new guy jumped in, and then of course Baby Yoda. I'm so glad that Baby Yoda is a real puppet and not CGI. Because it's so much better as a real thing,
Oh, absolutely.
He's like a Muppet. I mean, he's real, and everybody's in love with him. Even I get into Baby Yoda. Even though I know it's a gimmick, but it's like a really good gimmick. And he's so believable, he's so lovable that, like, every time I think of Baby Yoda, it's like seeing a squirrel out in my yard. It's like it immediately makes me happy.
Squirrel. Yeah, I know. Yeah, absolutely. That's a good. Yeah, it's very good. They did really good with that, and again, keeping it not digital. Obviously, there's always some little.
There are
digital,
there's some CGI
some little
stuff.
bits, like maybe when he's walking or whatever, but
and then they also work at, like, what I've heard is you start hearing stories about how when the actors are in between takes, they're sitting right next to Baby Yoda, and the guy controlling him starts messing with him, and then they start having a conversation, as if he's really alive. And you hear stories like that, and you're like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's just having that not heavily reliance on CG. It's practical. Right. I love those movies that have practical, like, again, Lord of the Rings, guys in suits, orcs, looks amazing, versus complete digital entities in the Hobbit. It just doesn't feel like they exist in this space with the actors. It just feels very disjointed. But having them in costume, it just that's in the practical and the models and the sets, it's just it was a little bit. Of course, for you. Yes.
So what did you think of, like, back the first actual Lord of the Rings movies that I saw were back in the 80s again, where they were animated. Remember those? Did you ever see those?
Oh yes, where they kind of rotoscoped the actors into it. Is it the Ralph Bakshi version? The Ralph Bakshi version?
I can't remember. But
it was like a condensed cartoon, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And the interesting thing was, like, the orcs looked really cool. Because what I found out what they did was the orcs were actually people in costumes, and then they sort of did these effects
Rotoscoped
to
over
it
them.
to make them look sort of half real, half animated. But it was a really cool effect. It worked really well.
Yeah, because they had like sort of red eyes, I think, as well, didn't they? And they looked
Yeah,
quite
and
intimidating.
this was before CGI was really a thing yet. So they did it using
Yeah,
just film techniques. And
yeah,
I
just
think they still drew. I think all the animated stuff was actually still hand drawn.
yeah.
You know.
They filmed it on live action, and they obviously put it on like a viewfinder, that kind of, and then they just painted sort of over it, almost like a manual rotoscoping with paints
Right.
and acrylics and those kind of things, and then
It
it
was
just
a
created
cool
this
effect
whole.
though. It worked.
Yeah, it looked good. Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
it definitely, and you can see that it inspired Peter Jackson as well, because there's certain visual flares in that translated into the Lord of the Rings movies, I noticed as well.
Yeah. Yeah, all that stuff is so interesting.
Yeah, I know.
So in North
Just yeah.
mythology, does North mythology have the idea of reincarnation in it?
I think they have more of a um, the honor of being in Valhalla for eternity.
Okay.
If you have like a good death, they're kind of, they want to die. They want to have that glorious battle, and go out like a king in their own right, and die in their own time, so they can sit at the banquet table, or the endless banquet table with Odin at the end and stuff, and drink and eat for
Okay.
eternity. That's the kind of the glory of it.
Okay, so this is where Star Trek got their whole Klingon thing then. They must have been drawing heavily on this because that's totally what Klingons live for, is to die well in battle.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that then the Klingons, the post TOS Klingons, the ones that live now, always have like battle armor on, and they pretty much look like Vikings, you know.
Yeah. Very big
So
stature, very
yeah,
long hair, and ready to, for sure.
which just dawned on me. Are there is a composer named Wagner who writes these gigantic operas that go on for hours, and it's all based in North mythology too, and it's also super powerful, super good music. So we also
Yeah,
have that.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
my grandfather, he was a musician, and he used to tell me about Wagner and stuff, and I used to listen to bits, and he used to explain to me like what's happening at certain points in the music, which is this, and he talked about Valhalla and the Rainbow Bridge and all this kind of stuff. And
Right.
he even he introduced me to Lord of the Rings.
Okay. And of course,
Going
like
to the
everybody
cinema and stuff,
knows,
and
like like dum ba da dum bum ba da dum bum ba da dum bum ba da 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 da. That
yeah,
everybody knows that theme now, and that's Wagner. That's right out. That's like the Ride of the Valkyries, where like they're
yeah,
riding on these flying horses, and there's these Norse goddesses in their battle
yeah,
armor ready to go and everything. So that's all in pop culture, whether people are aware of it or not now. And that's
yeah,
Wagner. And also, I mean, Wagner, movie composers, movie music heavily borrows from the way Wagner writes. So all the big, huge, powerful,
yeah.
expansive orchestral music, it's
Oh
got
yeah,
its roots in Wagner's music too. Wagner, and then also later like Ravel, and there's also a fair amount of Prokofiev in movie music and stuff like that too. But we're all like rooted back into this Viking
mm,
culture, whether we know it or not. Interestingly
yeah,
enough.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And with whilst we're on the kind of the subject of music, I'm just so disappointed with music in a lot of Hollywood movies recently over the last sort of 5, 6, 7 years. I mean,
Hmm.
I can't. I mean, you kind of look back to like things like John Williams, and all this kind of, and you hear these iconic things, the Superman theme, the Star Wars theme, even things like Back to the Future, you classic themes, and you just know it. You hear Lord of the Rings, you hear Harry Potter, you know it,
Right.
but there's just nothing. It just feels like they're just like, create a soundtrack that's generic, and it just blends into the background, and that's it. It doesn't work with the emotion of what's happening with the
Mm.
actors or the scene and everything, and it just doesn't complement what's going on. And I just think it's such a big thing. I mean, 20 what not 25 movies into the MCU, and I think I can only remember one theme tune, and it's done by a good composer, Alan Silvestri, did like Predator and stuff like that, and you know, the Avengers theme tune, that's the only one that I think anyone knows from that kind of set of movies. Anything else, I couldn't even tell you. I couldn't even hum what the other's music was, and it's just, that's something with what we're, you know, with Galamir and stuff. What we're trying to do is we want to make good music for it as well.
Oh, great.
We want to, and that's one for me. That's one of the most important things about it, is I'm always having conversations with the composer involved, that you know, it's got to, from very early on, this is the kind of mood and feel, and we're just bouncing ideas back and forth, sending samples, and we can hear it and think, oh, this would be good. And again, what I like as well is having some moments that maybe there's like a death scene, or maybe there's like a moment for mourning, or a moment of enlightenment, or whatever the character is. I like the music to craft that scene, and I would edit the scene to the music, so the music sort of builds, you know, the music flows.
I know that idea. I know that concept completely.
It is, and I think sometimes it just transforms. It just creates a beautiful kind of sequence, and I think a lot of movies, they don't do that. And it just allows, because I know normally in Hollywood and stuff, they're like, this is the edit. This film edit is locked. Make the music to it. You know, follow the beats. And yes, that does work. That is good, and that will happen. But I love moments where we go, right, okay, write a track that you don't have any confines, and you can just
So here's the reason why it works, is because just like movies or a book or whatever, a piece of music, you have to build things up, right? And like when you get to the peak of musical work, the reason why this peak is so satisfying is because it's been built up, and there's all these things that happened before it that made this peak what it is. Now, if you tell a composer, okay, you got 10 seconds, and at the end I want like this big huge thing, and I want it to sound great, well, I can't do in 10 seconds, I can't tell the musical story I need to do to make this peak have any meaning. So what you're saying is, okay, if you tell the composer, okay, now we've got a minute of time where this is what I want to happen, and then I'll tailor my scene to that. Well, then the composer has a chance to do something, you know?
Yeah. And then you find that your scene is now
so much more powerful.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So there's always some give and take. And what you can do sometimes is, if the composer wrote this great thing that's 2 minutes long, but then you're like, dang it, it's just too long.
Yep.
You don't have to go back to the composer and say, rewrite it. I mean, you can just do things where you can just fade it in and fade it out.
Yeah, normally what I do is I always say that, you know, if there's a track, send me the split track with all the instruments. And then what I do, then I can sort of peel away bits, and then it can sort of build in, and then sort of enter the next bit, so it builds up that way.
Right.
And then it is fun.
So so it sounds to me like, so you're the producer, you write the scripts. Are you the director too?
I'm focusing on directing. Yes.
Okay, but also you're the editor too, it sounds like.
Yes, being a low budget indie filmmaker, you are a sort of a one-man army. However, with Galamir and stuff like that, I am trying to bring more people to the mix. We do have a cinematographer.
What editor do you use?
Well, the software.
Yeah.
For years I used the Adobe suite, but over
Premiere
the last
Pro.
over the last 3 years, I've transitioned all my workflow to a DaVinci Resolve.
Oh, a lot of people are talking about that one now. I still use Premiere Pro, and it pretty much does what I needed to do, except
I tell you what, Premiere is really good for what you're doing, like on YouTube, blogs, Instagram, all that kind of things. And that's what I use for any sort of trailery type stuff that I do for any project. However, DaVinci is good for if you're doing a big project, like a short film, because it's for color grading, it is just insane. It's just so robust and so it's just so good. Even the Hollywood, they even color graded the Lord of the Rings 4K through DaVinci. They got the original negatives and they colored it all through that. So it's so powerful, but fraction of the cost. It's so good. It's so good. It's
so I think what you just told me is like, if I wanted to use DaVinci, I could potentially edit everything in Premiere Pro, and then once I'm all done, run it through DaVinci to tweak the colors. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, Premiere does have like you can.
Premiere Pro has all kinds of stuff like that too.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah,
but yeah, if you're kind of looking for a bigger, kind of slicker, polished piece, as it were, I'll probably go through DaVinci. And you can download the free version from the site, because there's the pro version, the free version. The free version only works at 1080, which I think for a lot of people is fine. But if you want to go into the kind of 4K heavy duty raw files from a camera and you create, then you're the pro, and it's only like $300, and you've got the pro version, no subscription, none of that stuff. You're good to go.
This is what always happens in my interviews, is suddenly there's a whole new thing I want to talk about. We're like over an hour in, and I'm about to launch on a new 3-hour subject, but we might as well. So I know everybody's in love with 4K, and like the screen is getting more and more pixels and everything's getting crystal clear and everything like that, right?
Yep.
But to tell you the truth, I don't like it. I actually prefer to watch a show or a movie or whatever where everything is a little bit fuzzed out and has that kind of cinematic effect. Because the problem is, when I watch something in 4K, I watch it and I'm like, well, that looks like a bunch of actors on a set, because I can see every single detail and everything looks fake.
Yep.
But if I watch it on a movie screen and there's a little bit of grain from the film or whatever, and everything's fuzzed out and it's got a slightly dreamy quality. Also, for example, I hate watching video where there's no motion blur, because you got 60 frames a second and everything's so clear no matter how everybody's working. I like the motion blur. I want to see it.
Exactly.
All that I like. I grew up with that. And to me, that looks cinematic and I like that look. So like what I end up doing, get this, is, a lot of times what I end up doing, even just with, if I film something on my phone, which is maybe 3,000 by 2,000 pixels, much of the time when I'm editing it, I take out my Gaussian blur plugin and I blur it. And that's even after I took a wide shot and I zoomed in, and it's already got some inherent fuzz in it because I zoomed in on a shot that was this wide. I still sometimes will add blur to it because it just doesn't look right to me. It looks too crisp.
Absolutely.
And I don't want to see every single zit and pore on the actor's face and every wrinkle,
Again, the kind of the TV manufacturers, and again, the kind of the camera manufacturers, they're just thinking from a big, consensus of people thinking, right, most of them are vloggers. They're probably going to be like, I don't know, filming on a beach in like a resort or something like that. And they're doing all these, like very tourism and leisure videos, because that's all it is. Most people nowadays with all these nice, amazing cameras and stuff, they're just filming, oh, look at some cool skateboarder thing, or, oh yeah, this is me in some nice swanky apartments in, I don't know, in the Caribbean or something. And okay, yeah, right. It's nice for that. It is nice for.
It's amazing. The cameras are amazing. It's amazing that
for those.
Yeah,
for those kind of things, it works. It works. But when you have these kind of, I guess, much younger filmmakers who are just keeping it on default setting and they're shooting something or whatever, and it's just so garish. They've got the HDR. I think is too much. And a lot of when I get any manual cameras and stuff, if I get a camera, I take off all the settings. I take off sharpness, I take off color, I take off all that stuff, and I use like a flat profile like Vlog, or if the camera shoots raw color science, then I've got the flat image and I can make the image how I want it to do, not what the camera tells me my image should look like, which is sharp and everything. And because TVs, all that motion blur, 60 frames. It just looks horrible. And a lot of young generations, they love it because they're so used to playing hyper realistic, higher frame rate computer games, and that's no
different because
motion
you
blur
want
or
it
anything.
smooth. You want it smooth in a game
But
so that
I've
it'll
had
work.
conversations with someone who's about 8-9 years younger than me, and they're going, "Oh God, I can't watch that. It looks too old." I'm like, "What do you mean it looks?" And that's all they said. It looks too old, and it's a a film. Oh, it looks old and stuff. And I go, well, no. And I'm like, okay, walk it through me, because you're by saying it's old, you're not giving me any information as to why you think it's unwatchable. And again, it's down to the frame rate. There's not much CGI. It just had. I think a lot of people coming into sort of, they're so used to sterilized images that grain. I love grain. I love that kind of textural kind of thing. I love locations. If it rains, if it's windy, it just adds something so nice to it. And I just don't like that perfect, clean, commercial look.
It's useful. I mean, the great thing about cameras are so good now that you can do things where you can shoot things wider, and then when you're with your software, you can zoom in and do some stuff.
That's where things like 4K, 5K, 6K, 8K, however K it goes into, because a lot of people, I have to get the latest camera. Why? Because it shoots 7K. But you got to ask yourself, where is your film or product going to end up? Whether it's going to end up on Vimeo or YouTube, you could get away with 1080, 4K pushing it. If you know your film is going to be on a cinema screen, then shoot higher resolution, because obviously blown up is going to look better clarity and not be broken up, pixelated or whatever. And two, only if you're working in VFX, because again, green screen. If I was doing a green screen shot, I'd shoot a higher resolution, because it means detail on things like hair and fuzzing on clothes and stuff, because you can get a nice cleaner key, or you can crop into a shot. Those kind of things I can agree with.
Plus, you can always, if it's too crisp, you can always blur it if you want, which is what I do.
You can, and that's what coming back to saying where I knock all the settings down, where it's kind of a more flatter profile, because it gives me that kind of, I'm not kind of taking away the image, artificially, but because I've got a flat image now, I can add to it, and it's not going to do something weird to it.
Yeah, well, you're in a different ballpark than me. I mean, your stuff is really beautiful and really high tech, and really, I mean, it looks great. So, well, hell, I think we got to wrap it up now. I don't know how, but
no, that's cool. Honestly, no, it's fine.
Okay, so so let's go back now and let's do another pitch for sure for your crowdfunding thing. It's on Indiegogo. I've never heard of Indiegogo before, but
Indiegogo is what's really good about Indiegogo compared to something like Kickstarter. Kickstarter is all or nothing. If you don't reach your goal, the money gets refunded. Whereas with Indiegogo, there's an option for flexible. So we're trying to raise 5,500. Well, even if we only get, say, 1,500 or 2,000, we and the campaign finishes, we get that still, which is good. Which again, it's a flexible funding. So that's kind of the one I kind of chose to go towards.
Okay, similar to GoFundMe. GoFundMe is like that too.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So so we shall see. Hopefully, again, it's just anyone who's watching today on this, and hope they can see the passion and what we're trying to do, and links and everything.
Links in the description. So
Indiegogo,
Gallomere. It's called. Did I say that right? Gallomere.
Yeah, Gallomere. Yes, correct. Gallomere, the movie.
Oh, I forgot to. So you're from the UK, but we didn't even find out what part of the UK you're from.
UK, East Anglia. So that is, if you're looking at the UK, we're on a corner, East Anglia. So that's kind of where the first Viking settlements, when they came to UK, because literally opposite.
The northern corner or the southern corner?
Is middle, somewhere in the middle, but to the east.
To the east, so like you're a little bit below Scotland, is that it?
Oh yeah, I'm probably about 6 hours away from Scotland. So so it's on the, but
okay, I think I know what that is. Very good.
East Anglia.
East Anglia. So you are in England proper then.
Yes,
Oh,
proper. Yes, deep into Viking roots for sure.
very good. Okay. So we're going to put links to that, to the Indiegogo. And now also we should put links to your short films, which by the way, your short films won some awards, right?
Yeah, it's uh cinematography, best fancy, and gotten a director award for one of them. I can't remember which one. I think it might be Val Raven. Yeah, and it ended up on Amazon Prime Video as well. So
Great.
people can check it out there. If not, it is now free on YouTube as well, so they
Hmm.
can check it out. So yeah, it's everywhere. So yeah, so people can see what we're all about.
That's great. Yeah,
Yeah.
like I said, I mean, I loved them. I thought they're really good.
Oh, bless you. Thank you.
So,
Thank
yeah. Is there any other is there any people you want to like um name drop that's in your show or your
Yeah, I
production?
got a name drop my man, Eric Moran, of course.
Oh, Eric Moran, yeah. Of
Yeah,
course. He's the one who hooked
he's
us
such a
up.
dude.
I forgot about
Yeah,
that.
no, he's cool, and it's yeah. I mean, me and
The
Eric have been
Orville
talking on and off
guy.
for
The
years, and
Orville.
yeah, and it's
Eric the Smoke.
yeah, no, he's such a lovely guy, and his wife as well. And I just, it's one of those things. I always would love to head out there, and he's always welcome. Like, hey, Ollie, come out here, come out and be with us. And yeah, it's just such a shame. The last couple of years, we've had all these restrictions and stuff. Hopefully, in the
Right.
future, when all that kind of stuff has fizzled away, I can make my way out
Ooh.
there and
I just thought of a controversial subject we could launch into in the next 10 seconds before we wrap it up. What is your opinion on Brexit?
oh god, it's 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 the least concerning thing going on. It's
Okay.
just
So it's,
it.
so it's no longer
England,
newsworthy.
no, God, it hasn't been newsworthy for the last 3 years. I don't think it's just
Okay.
it just fizzled into obscurity because England's never really, although we're part of Europe, we've never really, I think, felt that we're kind of part of Europe. We've got our own currency. We don't have the euro. We're our own island. It just felt very separated anyway. So it's kind of
Okay.
like it just and then yeah,
So,
it's all the COVID stuff came in and it just pulled focus and it just felt well that just fizzled into
okay.
nothing.
So it doesn't like didn't throw a wrench into any of your relationships with any filmmaking things you might have done in Europe
Mm,
or any of that kind of stuff or
no, no, not at all. I think you might have to like if I flew out to the US, which I have done before, you have to like pay like a was it EST ESTA something like that, like a little kind of ESTA, I think they're called ESTA, which is like a little kind of you pay like a fee and it's like a permit temporary visa thing just to kind of go say like I'm here for
um,
on holiday or something like that. I
because
think
you're not part of the EU, so you don't get the EU blanket thing anymore.
so. I think it
Okay.
would just get something like that. You just pay like a small fee, you get something which is maybe like $20 or something like that. It's not much, but yeah, that's kind of the only thing really. But again,
Okay.
it all falls down to kind of just the political entities, with their deals, that's the kind of where it all falls in. Like, oh, with export, import and stuff. I mean, that's well, we can't control that. It's like okay. So that's kind of
Okay. Good to know. All right. Well, very good. So, well, Oliver, it's been a pleasure talking to
no.
you,
Thank you for having me. Thank
and
you
I
for having
am
me.
going to
Really
contribute
appreciate it.
to your thing. Maybe I mean I already
Uh,
tried, but for some reason the page froze
no,
up, so
you do
maybe it
not
didn't.
have to. You do not have to. Just the,
Well,
the
I
honor
don't
of
feel
having me on here is very, very, very thankful.
I can do both. So,
Oh,
I
bless
want to
you.
be part
Bless
of
your
it.
heart. Thank you. It's been
Yeah.
wonderful. Thank you. It's been
It's
good.
been
It's
a
been good.
blast. So take care. And so
Yeah.
when the is the
So
short
yeah.
version of the film going to come out, do you think?
So the Indiegogo campaign's running for a month, so it
Okay.
finishes end of March, and I like to think by late summer, early winter. I like to think that we've got a good grasp on a short, hopefully.
And that'll be like 20 minutes, or how long do you think that'll be?
Yeah, I reckon it could be a bit between 25 to 35 minutes. I reckon.
Oh, okay.
And then we see from there. It could be
Cool.
longer. That's the thing. It could be longer. We might get a bit carried away and go, whoa, we've got 45 minutes, 50 minutes. We only need like another 20 minutes of edit stuff. We've got a feature film right there. So that's kind of
Yeah.
doing a short, it just allows us to kind of observe and see where we are, and then we can make that decision.
That's exciting. Cool. Well,
Wonderful.
It's been a pleasure. I look forward to it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. God bless you and everything that you do. It's just, as you know, I'm already a super fan. Those 2 short films you did, I thought were excellent.
Bless you.
So
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Cool. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll catch up soon.
All right.
Fantastic creations emerging spontaneously from the space of life. For the benefit of all beings everywhere. We gotta